Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get this debate started today. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and virtually. Thank you for joining. My name is Daniel Silva. I am the President and CEO of the KCK Chamber of Commerce, and we are honored to have this debate and hosted, sponsored by the KCK Chamber of Commerce. I also want to give a big thank you to Mayor David Alvey and Mr. Garner for agreeing to do this. We think it's absolutely critical that everyone participate in this democratic process. We know these are not ideal times during COVID, but we are fortunate enough to be able to host this event while observing masking protocols and, again, giving folks the option to join us virtually if they so choose. I also want to acknowledge any elected officials in the room currently. So if you're an elected official, please stand up and be recognized. I also want to give a big thank you to our KCK Chamber Board of Directors and our KCK Chamber staff. Everyone works really hard on behalf of our members and the community, and we believe it's important that we continue this work, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So again, thank you to KCK Chamber Board and KCK Chamber staff. Round of applause, please. Last but not least, I want to thank our very generous sponsors and members, specifically our public policy sponsors, Burns & McDonnell and BPU, for helping support the work that we do. We pride ourselves on really advocating for and on behalf of not just our business community, but our community at large, and we hope today is a reflection of that. And now at this point, it is my pleasure to introduce the gentleman that's going to guide us through today's process. Please join me in welcoming award-winning journalist from KMBC News, Channel 9, Mr. Michael Mahoney.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for those who are here in person. Thank you for those that are watching online. Thank you that are watching this after the broadcast on August 31st. Thank you for your citizenship. It's very important. There are a lot of people that can tell you everything under the sun about what's going on in Washington, but they can't tell you much about what's happening down the street. And the fact of the matter is what happens with your mayor or your commission member or your city council member has an awful lot more impact on your life on a day-to-day basis, whether or not your trash gets picked up, whether or not you have cops, whether or not you have fire service, trash service, all the essentials to your life. All that happens at the local level, and that's why local government, local civics, and local elections are so very, very important. So thank you for practicing your civic duty here today in this hall and online. We're going to try to have a debate rather than a forum here tonight. First off, let's introduce our candidates tonight for the election in November. I'm going to start off by introducing Mayor David Alvey, coming out from my left. Mayor Alvey. Coming out from my right, his challenger in the November election, Garner. Thank you, gentlemen. Folks, here are the rules. Candidates, here are the rules. There'll be no opening statements. Neither candidate will have questions. We'll have these questions prior to the debate. Nobody's seen these except for me. Candidates will flip a coin to see who answers first. That has already taken place. Mr. Garner won that toss. He'll be answering the first question first. Then we're going to alternate. And then, by virtue of that decision, Mr. Alvey will present the final closing statement. Each candidate will have between 60 and 90 seconds to answer. Candidate B has the option of going first or second for closing remarks. As I mentioned, we just did this. We are going to have a timekeeper tonight. Ethan, will you please stand up? Gentlemen, Ethan will be sitting right there, and when he holds up that white placard with the 20-second mark on it, that's your cue, gentlemen, to know that you have 20 seconds remaining in that. And Ethan, when they hit that 20-second mark, you tell me, because we're going to move on to something else, all right? We're going to try to keep this on time. And with that, let's get it started. Candidates, there's some question and concern about whether you two folks will meet again for any other debates between now and Election Day. So, for the record, will you both agree to appear at a second Chamber of Commerce debate on Wednesday, October 29th, here at the same time, at the same place? Chamber's already agreed to do this. Will you commit to appearing to a second Chamber of Commerce debate on that date at this location at the same time as today? Garner?
Yes.
Want to add to it?
I'd be more than welcome and honored to attend. I think that the community deserves to hear from myself and the mayor where we stand on the issues. And so I appreciate the chamber and I appreciate you for opening the invitation, and I will, God willing, be present.
Mr. Alvey?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with Mr. Garner. The public deserves and needs to be able to hear our positions and to be able to separate ourselves from one from another.
Very good. Thank you for that, gentlemen. On to other questions now. Inside the I-635, I-70 corridor, development of all kinds has been anemic to stagnant for decades. What plans do you have to change that trajectory? Mr. Garner, since you answered that first question first response will now go to Mr. Alvey. Mr. Alvey.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the trajectory of UG finances going forward, the only way we're going to be able to solve the problem of generating sufficient revenues for providing good services and improved services to our community and to take the pressure off the tax burden is to continue to develop the county, and it has to happen all across the county, and it really has to happen in those communities that were redlined and experienced disinvestment and blight over the decades. And so, in fact, what is happening, that development that we need is already happening. In fact, just last Thursday, 60 different land bank properties owned by the unified government that are a burden on us because we have to cut the grass, or the neighbors cut the grass often, and we have to maintain them, will now go to private individuals who will develop those, build houses. And in fact, there are 3 properties right along Quindaro Boulevard which are projected to be developed into retail space. And so what we're seeing is the interest in that area is growing, and we are developing strategies. I've worked with our staff to make sure that they're looking at all friction points that we create that prevents development from happening. We want to reduce those thresholds to development. We want to reduce that friction. We want to bring in additional resources, gather in developers, and give them incentives to be able to carry forward. We have to redevelop that community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner. Same question.
We've heard this before, and no disrespect to anybody that agrees with that narrative, but if you go, and you don't have to look too far when you look in the area that Mr. Mahoney talked about, and you see the disinvested in these areas. We've heard for years and years that development prospects out west, that the money from that would be generated and would flow east. The people I've talked to are frustrated, they're upset, they're disgusted at the lack of investment in these disinvested areas. We hear every year and every election cycle that we're going to do something about these areas. You need not look too far at the Indian Springs project in area. Where are we? We have kicked the can down the road, and we have allowed these developers to take advantage of the taxpayers of Wyandotte County. The people I've talked to engaged me and asked me to run because they said they're sick and tired of being tired, and they've said enough. When you look at Parkwood Pool, and now if you just look at that situation, I was out there when it was 95 degrees, and we did not have a good plan for our kids to have a swimming pool, the only swimming pool in Kansas City, Kansas, and we've got people making good money to make these decisions. And so you ask yourself, where's the leadership? Now we're hearing here recently that now we want to privatize and have a private contractor come in and look at Parkwood Pool and take over with no guarantees that the pool will be open because of a questionable status of no lifeguards. So when you talk about that,
Okay.
sorry.
Very good. To follow up on this, gentlemen, Mr. Alvey, some time ago, on June the 6th, 2019, on a unified government broadcast, you said, and I quote, "The people who live within a mile of that site, meaning Indian Springs, are going to see an improvement. That's really exciting." It was over a year ago. What's happened since then?
Yeah, so the difficulty obviously is that the financing that the developer, the Scavuzzo's, was planning bringing in fell through because of COVID, and we've been giving them opportunities to bring those developers, bring investors back in. You know, that site has been emptied for over 20 years. We could bring a developer in there who could do, let's say, a truck stop. That's not what the community wants. And so we really found someone who would come bring amenities. They're still committed to doing that, and yet they will say that they're just having some difficulties pulling together the financing, and that's a kind of a normal thing. I will say also, in regards to the pool, the private contractor has committed to using as many Wyandotte County residents and students, persons, to be lifeguards. They will provide lifeguards even if we cannot provide them. I talked to the gentleman who, in fact, was in charge of the pool over the decades, and he said that even he had to go out and recruit young men and women he knew to come and work at the pool because there was a shortage of lifeguards. But that lifeguard shortage is not just our city, it's region-wide. In fact, it's nationwide. So we did not decide to open the pool because COVID was still raging at the time. We needed to make a decision about that pool. It was done for safety reasons. We wanted to protect the kids and the people who worked there. And unfortunately, when we did decide, okay, well, now we can open it, we did not have lifeguards, and we have a long-term solution to solve that problem, working with schools and the Y to do that.
Very good. Mr. Turner, let me follow up there. What do you think about what Mr. Alvey said here with respect to the economic difficulties that have stalled any project out at Indian Springs? There are lots of places that have gone through that. Is that an acceptable answer to you? What are your thoughts on what you've heard now?
Well, the people I've talked to, they don't think that's acceptable. When you look at what the unified government spent to acquire and to demolish the Indian Spring Complex and what that developer got in relation, the taxpayers basically lost in that equation. And when you talk about a developer that continues to kick the can down the road, on the front end, we need to be proactive. We need to, when these developers come in, we need to hold the line and say, here's your timeline. If you don't meet this timeline, the deal is done. And then we go look for another contractor or another developer that wants to come in, that wants to be a good partner in Wyandotte County and wants to be a good neighbor and do the things and provide the resources and the goods and services that Wyandotte County everyday citizens and the hardworking families of Wyandotte County deserve.
Is that an acceptable answer, that this project stalled because of the pandemic?
I don't have the information on that. I'm not going to say that's acceptable to a lot of people because there's a lot of developments going on that have been going on.
All right. Okay. That's okay. Very good.
In that regard,
gentlemen, let's move forward here. There is a common fear of gentrification and developers moving in and pushing others out. How do you plan to promote community development and growth while maintaining the integrity of the communities that already exist? Mr. Turner, you take that one first.
I think you have to invest in small businesses. There's a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs that exist in Wyandotte County. You have small businesses that are already here that need investment and need support. You have startups willing to get started. I think that's the very first step. Instead of giving big corporate tax incentives and tax breaks to corporations that provide no benefit to the average hardworking taxpayer in Wyandotte County, I think the next level of innovation that we need to look at is investing in our small businesses and our upstarts and our entrepreneurs. The reason for that is our Latino community has shown how successful that can be in not only starting new business and creating jobs, but anchoring people right here in Wyandotte County. And when people are anchored here, they're paying taxes. And when they pay taxes, it allows for the unified government to do more as far as providing services to the community. And it allows residents that move in these houses, in some of these neighborhoods, to really work on revitalizing these neighborhoods in a way that we feel fuels the growth that we want to see east of 635.
Mr. Alvey, gentrification. How do you protect what's there versus what might be coming?
I'm sorry?
The question here, there is a common fear of gentrification and developers moving in and pushing others out. How do you plan to promote community development and growth while maintaining the integrity of communities that already exist?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, gentrification is not just about whether someone might get pushed out because they can no longer pay their property taxes because of the increase in property values. It's also about the people feeling that they're forfeiting their culture, they're losing their culture. But if you look at so many of our neighborhoods, the people are gone because the housing is gone. And so we've got to find a way to continue to incentivize that housing and provide incentives to do that. And so we're putting together a series of initiatives to do that. In fact, I've worked with the Board of Public Utilities. They've already agreed if you want to come in and build new in a land bank property, you'll provide free water hookup and power hookup. The unified government is going to provide free sewer hookup. There is already, you can get a land bank out of the land bank for free. We're going to, we have a 95% tax abatement for 10 years, and I have been reaching out purposely to local developers, small scale, mid-scale developers, to come in and say, together we can create a catalyst for development and really concentrate them. The small businesses, entrepreneurs need rooftops. They need people. And if we can bring new housing, we can sustain more businesses. And so I'm committed to that. And that's going to be African American. It's going to be Latinx. It's going to be anyone who wants to come in at any level is going to have an opportunity. I will also say this. When people say that the development out west does not benefit, that's not true. Even the new Amazon immediately provides $1.8 million in new tax revenues as soon as it's operational to state, local, and school districts.
Mr. Garner, to follow up here for a second, you were talking about the tax breaks for big corporations, and you questioned whether or not they worked for the average folk. Can you expand on this a little bit in the sense that you were talking, sir, about tax breaks for smaller folks? Is it your intention here to scale back the big deals and concentrate on the smaller ones, eliminate the big deals altogether? What exactly are you talking about?
I just think we need the leadership that is going to come in to play and say that when these developers come in, we want them to be good neighbors. We want them to pay their fair share of taxes. It does affect our schools. It affects the hardworking families that do have to pay property taxes in Wyandotte County. I'm not against developers wanting to come in town, but I think, and I do know, we do need to be responsible when we give these tax breaks, tax abatements, and these incentives. We cannot continue to give BPU gifts. We cannot continue to give huge multi-year tax abatements. For example, we talk about property values rising and what a great thing that is. Well, that's only a great thing if I want to move. If I'm a big business, I come in and I get huge abatements and tax credits, and you live next door to me, I'm not paying little to nothing. But your home values go up, you pay more taxes, so really you're paying for me to be there. Then you talk about the jobs. What type of jobs are they really bringing in? Well, if you go drive through the parking lot, some of these people, a lot of the employees don't live in Wyandotte County. And then you look at the types of goods and services that they're providing. Let's go to the people that they do employ in Wyandotte County, some of these individuals. A lot of them don't pay a livable wage with great benefits that allow people to build wealth in Wyandotte County. It's stagnating people, and I've talked to these people that have to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet. So we can do a better job. So no, I'm not against tax incentives or incentives to bring developers in, but I am against making sure that, I am for making sure that it's responsible and beneficial to the average taxpayer in Wyandotte County.
Okay, next question here is related. Star bonds have been a great success in western Wyandotte County, yet there have been no projects inside of the I-635, I-70 corridor. What plans do you have to bring a star bonds project to the urban core? And Mr. Garner, I think you have the first answer on this?
Well, one thing I'm looking at, and right here in Wyandotte County, we have a jewel. My vision, and the vision that I've talked to, and this isn't so much my vision, but the people I've talked to have told me and gave me some great ideas. We always talk about what's out west and the money that's out west fueling the development and the growth of the rest of Wyandotte County. My vision is that we invest in the distant areas of Wyandotte County and we bring in responsible incentives to bring developers in, and we support small businesses. I envision a Wyandotte County where our downtown is so great that we start talking about the tax revenues flowing out west. And if you look all around Wyandotte County, this is prime land. It's surrounded by great highways. But you look around, there's development everywhere around Wyandotte County except for in Wyandotte County. And that can be changed. When you talk about star bonds, one of the plans that I have is I think that it's been overlooked for years is the Quindaro ruins. I envision a DC style type of venue where people can come from all over the world to a museum with artifacts, interactive things for our kids, and really help people learn about the trek from slavery to freedom in free Kansas. I think that would be a boon for that area if it's done right and it's done responsibly. And we could use star bonds to do that, and that could tie into the 18th Street corridor where there's businesses there that need help, that are struggling. And we could really look at bringing in the hotels, the development, the mixed-use properties to really bring in the types of goods and services that the people in that area want, along with the jobs that they need to build wealth and to sustain their families. And I think the Quindaro ruins could be a good catalyst for that.
Mr. Alvey?
Yeah, so again, I will say that that's already happening. You know, the tax revenues we're getting off the legends is already flowing throughout Wyandotte County. You know, before that area was developed, it was only producing about $213,000 a year in property and sales tax. Today, it generates $36 million, and that is used to provide services throughout the county. In fact, on the sales tax, $12 million of that, $7.2 million of that was dedicated to reducing the mill levy by 6 mills, and $1.7 million of that is actually used for blight remediation to fund up the SOAR program, most of which is being used east of really 72nd Street. And so the revenues from that is already flowing to the rest of the county and to the city. And I would have to say we have to be careful here. You know, they've changed the star bond legislation. You have to have $75 million in sales annually in order to float a star bond. We've drawn the district. We tried to put together a star bond district that included the Quindaro ruins going all the way down to the Call Point, all the way down to the new Rock Island Bridge. That area alone does not even generate $75 million. It didn't generate $50 million. So star bonds can only be used in specific areas. It has to be approved by the state. There's not enough revenues coming from that to use a star bond. But nevertheless, he's right about the Quindaro ruins. That is a national treasure. It has to be treated as such, and we have to continue to do what we need to do to really tell that story. We have to tell the story about these folks who came across the river to get to freedom. That's a great story. We want to continue that. We want to share that with the entire nation and the world.
Mr. Garner, the legislature did change star bond legislation and development. Your plan run into an obstacle here?
I'm an optimist. I'm not going to say that...
well, everybody's an optimist.
Yes. I believe, in my message has always been collaborating with people that can find solutions to problems. And I believe that we can work with the state in a way, and if not star bonds, there's other incentives out there that we can invest in, and I believe that Quindaro ruins could be a catalyst for an economic boom in the northeast area of Wyandotte County. That's what an investment is, and I'm willing to take the chance of siding and standing with the people that want better goods and services and want resources in those areas that have been disinvested for far too long and ignored. Moving past even the star bonds, if you look, there was the opportunity zones. There were 6 that were developed in Wyandotte County. And not one of those was put in the areas, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the people that, that support my campaign, in the areas that needed it the most. And that's a problem. And so I think there's a lot of work that can be done. You got to have the right leadership with the right vision and the commitment and purpose and drive to really work with people and work with the right people to get the things done. I believe for every problem there's a solution, and I'm not going to stop until the people in these disinvested areas, if I'm your mayor, get the level of attention, respect, and leadership they need so they can have the goods and services to enjoy just like every other part of Wyandotte County. They pay taxes. They deserve the goods and services just as well. They've been ignored for far too long. That's the type of leadership that I'm going to bring, and that's the type of leadership that Wyandotte County deserves.
Okay, folks, let's move on here. Candidates, urban blight and vandalism in the inner city make it difficult to attract investors. That may be an understatement. How do you plan to address this problem? Mr. Alvey, first.
Right. So I'm going to go back to the question of the opportunity zones because I think the public deserves the right answer here. The opportunity zones were, there was a requirement from the state level that they received from the federal level, and you had to have projects that were already ready to go. That's why they decided those opportunity zones where they are were selected. It wasn't because anything unified government did or anything leadership did here. It was prior to me. That's why that happened that way. So just so everyone knows. Absolutely. You know, I'm all about neighborhoods. In my experience, what makes a great neighborhood are great neighbors. What makes a great city are great neighborhoods. And the people out there every day doing what they need to do to report crime, to report graffiti, to talk about trash, to call the unified government when we're not cutting the lots. Those are the people, those committed people, the resilient people of Wyandotte County. That's the story that needs to be told. And I'm so proud all across this community, everywhere, there are people who step up and really try and solve problems on their own and reach out to unified government for help. The hardest part in the unified government is sometimes we don't have the resources to help them because we simply, again, we're a poor community. We've had 60,000 population loss over the decades. We grew 7,500 over the past decade. That's good news. That means that people see what's available here and they want to come in. And so that's only going to continue. And so what we need to happen is already happening. We just got to continue the momentum, and we rely on our neighborhoods and our neighbors to do that.
Mr. Garner?
Repeat the question. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat it for me, please?
Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Urban blight and vandalism in the inner city makes it difficult to attract investors. How do you plan to address that problem?
When I was in public service at the unified government, the SOAR program was really a good program that really addressed that. I've heard that Operation Brightside hasn't been funded. One of the things that I'd like to see is put more money into Operation Brightside to work on graffiti, to work on blight, work with our court system, our municipal court system. There were programs in place that when I was over community policing that we worked that individuals could go out and they could help clean up vacant lots and things of those sort. But at the bottom line, at the end of the day, the bottom line is that the unified government really needs to invest more money in blight. And it goes back to if people don't feel like their community looks a certain way and feels a certain way, it often psychologically tends to lead them to act a certain way. When you talked about reducing crime and how blight and vacant lots and overgrown weeds in some of these lots play on just the people's opinion, not just of their neighborhood, but of themselves, that's what investing in the disinvested is about. It's not just structures or places, it's the people, places, and programs where investment is needed the most. So one of the things that I would really push for and advocate for is more money into those programs that I talked about to work on blight. We often send codes out to tag people that don't mow their lawn or mow their lots, but it doesn't take you don't have to drive too far in certain parts of this community and look at the pockets of poverty where the UG has not afforded themselves the same standard to keep these lots mowed and looking nice for the people in these areas.
Gentlemen, a quick question for both of you. I'm not looking for a long answer. Eric, you don't have to time this. We'll start with you, Mr. Garner. A guess. How many vacant lots are there in KCK? Just real quick, off the top of your head, what's your guess?
That's a good question. I don't have those facts in front of me, so I know there's plenty.
Mr. Alvey?
So we have 4,500 land bank properties, and we think there are 10,000 vacant properties in private hands.
Vacant lots?
Vacant lots, yes.
Huh? That's a problem, isn't it?
Absolutely, because again, it's a hole in our tax base.
All right, very good. So, Mr. Garner, if you accept that number, and I'm not saying it's right, but there's considerable, we'll agree on that, okay? Tell me about how you're going to spend money and how much money do you plan to spend on the vacant lot problem?
I think you have to have a strategy. When you talk about, and what the mayor has talked about, is land bank properties. I've met people that say they can't get access to the land bank properties unless they're connected, privileged, powerful, or they know somebody in the unified government. There are people that want to take on some of these properties that are adjacent to them, and they will mow them, they will care for them, and they will take care of them. I know people that on a weekly basis go out to some of these properties don't get paid a dime and take care of these properties. These are the people that we need to leverage and that we need to collaborate with and connect with. We also need to make it easier for people to get these land-based properties, and not just people that live next door to the properties, but these small businesses and the entrepreneurs. We need to come up with a strategy that can build wealth and grow these areas in Wyandotte County, and I have a plan to do that, and that's where it starts.
Mr. Alvey, your strategy?
Right, so it's what we're already doing. The SOAR program is up by $7 million, and that's tax revenues coming off the Legends project. You know, we are we've already changed our land bank process so that you can go on the land bank map and see what kinds of problems there are on that land bank, whether it's got too much slope, perhaps maybe the building was taken down before 1993 because the structure might be actually in that basement there, which might be cause problems with pests and with unstable soil. We cut 13,000 land bank properties last year. We cut properties 13,000 times last year. This year we're having a difficulty.
You said cut. Do you mean cut grass? Is
Yes,
that what
sir.
you meant? All right.
Yes, we mowed these lots 13,000 times last year, what we had and abated for others. But we're down 12 persons in our public works. We can't hire them on because frankly we're not offering enough money. There are 7,000 available jobs in Wyandotte County today, and we're not able to hire people on. Even the Fuddruckers out at the Legends some days doesn't open because they can't fully man their shift. So we have a strategy moving forward, and we're going to be bringing together developers, appraisers, lenders. I've already been working with them, identifying them, bringing them in. They're excited about the project we have to reduce the friction of getting these land banks into their hands and to get these things built. Because as we bring each of these houses, it rebuilds the community from the neighborhoods up. Thank you.
Mayor, quickly, can you give the voters a timetable on that project?
Well, so there's already one project that's in play that's been presented to our standing committee between 13th and 17th in parallel, which we've got letters of intent from Community America Bank and from Vibrant Health, and we also are looking to site a police station for the Northeast at that area with another community amenity. Plus there will be townhomes and a food court. But not only that, what we want to do is decide that that is a node for development, a catalytic node for development. And so you take the advantage, what we've got there, that investment at a larger scale, and you invite smaller developers to come in and also build because there's safety in numbers. And as they come together, they're going to see that I can come in with my investment, whether it's one home, two homes, maybe I want to do a row of townhomes. We can do this, and we can build beautiful, sustainable neighborhoods. That's what we've got to do. You're right, the people in this neighborhood have waited too long for this, but really the time is right. We have to take advantage of this. We have proximity to the entire metro area. We have authenticity. We have diversity. We have so many accessibility, affordability. We can really make this happen, but we've got to bring investments into this.
Is there a timetable for any of these projects? Quickly.
Yes, so the project on parallel has already come through standing committee. It'll be coming through the UG Commission next, probably 2 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Garner, what do you think of that response?
Well, I mean, my response is that, again, most smart people, and there's a lot of them in this town, can walk outside and see the disinvestment, the disarray, the blight, the overgrown fields, and so they reject that argument in some cases. And they question whether or not we're being selective where the goods and services and the resources are being placed in Wyandotte County. And that's what they look at. When you look at the 2017 budget of $345 million that was proposed in 2017, we're proposing a $420 million budget going into 2022. That's a huge increase. And to say that we don't have the employees, okay, that may be true, but there's a lot of small businesses, there's women contractors, there are minority contractors that are begging to get into the door that go out and provide some of the contractual services that the unified government needs, including cutting these lawns and cleaning up some of these places. But we have to have the moral will, and you have to have the right leadership in place that is going to say there's a problem and we can't keep continuing to overlook the disinvested areas of Wyandotte County. It's shameful when we go back not just a year or 2 years, and Mr. Alvey, this just doesn't happen with Mr. Alvey, this goes back for decades. Where we're at today is an area of Wyandotte County that is really reeling from the disinvested. We talk about things that could be done, but every mayor has 4 years to do it, and yet we're right back here on this merry-go-round to absolutely nowhere of nothing getting done for the people.
Okay. One of the issues in this campaign, almost everyone, every campaign in KCK, as far as I can remember, is the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities. Now, the municipally owned Board of Public Utilities is a different political jurisdiction than the unified government of KCK, and that is a distinction that's important. And it obviously provides electric and water service to the community. And so the chamber wants to know, why are there so many unified government charges on the customer's electric and water bills? These include trash, wastewater, stormwater. Can you explain? And Mr. Alvey, we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. So that's correct. And the reason the bill shows the UG charges is it is cheaper for the unified government to send out their bill with the BPU bill than do a separate mailing. It's as simple as that. The other thing I would have to say is, again, that is a separate entity, and they have their own elected board, which is what the citizens wanted beginning in 1929. And, you know, people, I understand the complaints about the UG, the BPU charges. So what I have asked for, and they have now changed the billing, the look of the bill, because I thought it needed to be more transparent so that there will be, you will see this, one page of your bill will show the UG charges, one page, a separate page, will show the BPU charges, so that when you get to it, you'll be able to see immediately, okay, this is what the BPU charges, this is my power, this is my water, this is the ERC charge, this is the energy surcharge, environmental surcharge, and then on the UG side, you'll see this is stormwater, this is the pilot. Those are all from the UG side. It's because I thought that would be more transparent for our public to be able to see that, rather than try and look through it and try and make sense of it. And I will say this, I've talked to an individual who said that he moved from Leawood to Kansas City, Kansas, and he compared his bills from Leawood to Evergy to BPU, and with all the taxes and charges from that he would reach out there other than the UG charges, he found that it was 13.2 cents per kilowatt hour in Leawood, and in the BPU, and 16.1 cents in Leawood.
Mr. Garner, what do you think about the bills?
Well, I think it's just continuing the whole game of smoke and mirrors and the shell game. People want a utility bill that is a real utility bill, period. Period. They don't want a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, which is a tax to the unified government, on their utility bill. And so often I've seen over the years, while I've been in public service, is that the BPU board takes the blame for that, when they shouldn't. The unified government controls that, in my understanding. The leadership, the mayor, the administrator, whoever you want to say, they have the ability to make that transition. The transition should occur to where a utility bill should be just that, it should be reflective of the utilities that you use. The pilot and other fees we need to find another place to put it, be it on the property tax bill or some other place, but let's make it so when people pull up their utility bill, it truly reflects the utility bill that they want. And the pilot, we need to look at a way to reduce it. I believe when it started out, it was at 5%. It's all the way up to almost 12% now. We've got to get that down. It hurts hardworking families. I've met families that are trying to keep their lights on, have their lights shut off. Some people are struggling because the utilities are so high between food, paying their rent, and keeping their utilities on. And then when you talk about COVID and how that impact the poor people in this town, we need to have a strategy that addresses these issues, because the moratorium is off, rents are going to become due, and we're headed towards a crisis, unprecedented like anybody's ever seen, in my opinion, unless we have the leadership that comes up with a strategy that is designed to put people first and not put people above politics.
Hey, Mr. Garner, help the folks out here for a second. You were a couple of times referred to pilots. Explain to them what a pilot is for me, just real quick.
The pilot is the payment in lieu of tax. It's a tax that doesn't benefit the BPU in any way. It goes directly to the my understanding, the unified government's general fund for.
Okay, here's my follow-up though. You called it a shell game. Why? Demonstrate it to me.
It's a shell game because in people's mind, when they pull up their utility bill, it's not a real utility bill. It's a utility bill with a tax to the unified government. And what people are saying, let me have a utility bill that really reflects the utilities that I use. And the pilot and all these other fees, we need to find another place to put that so it's adequately reflected in a way to where people can feel comfortable about what they're paying and they know what they're paying as in regards to the level of taxes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where so much what that looks like as far as the pilot being something that isn't controlled by the BPU. People just want the pilot looked at ways to find ways to reduce the pilot, and that's something that I'm committed to.
Mr. Alvey, a response to that?
Yeah, well, of course, everybody wants to reduce taxes, but everybody, as I've heard, wants to improve services. So I don't know how, other than bringing more economic development and making things more efficient, that you reduce taxes and improve services, which cost more. That's the balance. That's the fundamental problem of any municipality, any county, any state or local government. You know, and if the $32 to $34 million that comes to the unified government from the pilot goes to pay for those services. 60% of our current budget goes to spend for public safety. That is fire, that is police, that is sheriff's department, 60%. Now we can, if people, I don't hear anybody telling me we need to reduce our police force or our fire stations. I'm not hearing that from anybody. Everybody is saying they want more service. They want their roads paved. We're only spending $10 million a year on our roads. We need to be spending $20 million a year because these roads are deteriorating. They're reaching emergency situation, and that becomes more and more expensive for us to fix those going forward. So if we want to invest in our neighborhoods, we have to have the funds to do that. There's no magic wand here. If there is one, please bring it forward. I'd love to see it. I would say also it makes sense to combine the bill. I think it's good to separate the BPU and the UG side of the bill on separate sheets. That's what we're doing. But rather than sending multiple mailings out, it seems to make sense to make one mailing out of there. But people need to know that this is coming, that these funds are going to pay for UG services.
So it kind of sort of walks us into our next question here, gentlemen. The combined city and county property tax rate for Kansas City, Kansas is among the highest in the region. Taxes are necessary to fund infrastructure and services. Well, what's your plan to reduce taxes and bring them more into line with other cities in the metro? Mr. Garner, let's start with you.
The first thing I'd like to do is, if I'm your mayor, I'd like to do a complete top-to-down, independent audit of both the BPU and the unified government. I want to see where our money is being spent, how it's being spent, and see if there's fraud, waste, and abuse, and also have this consultant in this audit give recommendations on how we can better consolidate departments that really haven't been fully consolidated since consolidation of the unified government, look at how we can streamline government, look at how we can better use technology to provide better services at a lower cost, and to transfer those whatever savings that we get in working with our commission to allow the taxpayers to be able to realize that. When you, again, just in 2017, the UG's budget was $345 million thereabouts. A proposed budget of $420 million. I don't believe in big government. I believe in government that provides essential services, and just in response to Mayor Alvey, there was an initiative, a sales tax initiative that the voters of Wyandotte County passed just for public safety, infrastructure, and the sorts. And we need to make sure that money is used appropriately in the manner that the voters expected it to be used for. I am a big proponent of making sure that public safety is fully funded. And that we also open the fire station back up in Fairfax, because that can drive away businesses that more or less might have wanted to stay here or want to come here. So we need to do a better job of engaging with the businesses we have, investing in small businesses and giving those opportunities, and making sure that the big corporate investors and developers that want to come in here, they're good partners that want to pay their fair share of taxes to be a member and a good community partner in Wyandotte County.
Mr. Alvey.
Yeah, so if you look at how much you pay in your taxes each year, 23% of your tax dollar goes to unified government, to the city side, 23% goes to the county side, 54% goes to your schools, the community college, and to the library. So the UG part of this is 46 cents out of a dollar. Actually, we have a plan. We're moving forward on this, and we've been doing this consistently. As we pay down our debt, we're not going to be paying as much on debt service. If you look at the 38 mills on the city side that we pay in taxes, 17 of those mills are going for debt service. So the commission has committed and continues to reduce how much we're borrowing each year so we can continue to reduce the amount of indebtedness. And each year we're going to reduce that, and that's going to open up more room for more tax relief. You know, I keep hearing the date, $420 million budget. That's an anomaly. This one budget includes the ARPA funds, and so we have those funds that we're going to be able to expend on other things. And we've already committed millions of dollars to homeless problems. We're committing more and more money to our COVID vaccination effort. We're spending the money in the right places, and we are streamlining. So we are currently engaged in what is called priority-based budgeting to make sure that the departments, the programs we are funding up are aligned with what the community wants, and they're achieving the goals. If not, we got to shift those funds, pull them out, do whatever. So that's in process, and we do expect to see conservatively a 5% reduction when we're through with that process, but that's a multi-year process.
Just for clarification, again, for the folks watching at home, did you say, Mr. Alvey, that this budget, this 420 budget, includes recovery fund, COVID fund? Is that what you were referring to?
ARPA, yes, the ARPA money.
Okay, all right.
American Relief Plan Act.
All right. Just helping out the folks at home. Candidates. There's large companies in our community employing many folks who don't live in our community. Mr. Garner, you referred to that a little earlier. In Kansas City, Missouri, residents are required to pay an earnings tax on the income that they earn within the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and their city limits. That 1% tax also applies to the net profits of businesses. What do you gentlemen think about an earnings tax for KCK? Mr. Garner, let's start with you.
Well, I, for one, I support it, but that's a state issue. That is really controlled by the legislator, and that is something that, although I may support it, that's something that's really right now, it's not an option from the municipal level, but I would, if mayor, make sure that we advocate for that to the state as one of our municipal priorities.
Mr. Alvey, earnings tax?
You know what, I think that an earnings tax would be awesome. I worked in Missouri, and so I paid the 1% earnings tax, and then I paid my taxes in Wyandotte County, so I got hit on both sides. Again, I know this happened in the decades past, that Wyandotte County tried, I think it was Mayor Jack Reardon tried to move through the legislature a proposal for an earnings tax for Wyandotte County, and frankly, it was blocked by the Johnson County delegation. If you look at where we are in employment, only at General Motors, for instance, only 15%, 16% of those folks live in Wyandotte County, and that is more a function of the kind of neighborhoods we've not been able to provide or the kinds of schools perhaps we've not been able to provide. And I will also say this, that the depopulation that happened in Wyandotte County, redlining was not just a one-and-done deal. There was also a massive flight of people when the schools were truly desegregated, and that's a fact. And we have to be honest about that people left because of desegregation. And so we have to find a way. You know, it's interesting to me that Sumner, again, is one of the top schools in the country, and that's great when you get into Sumner, but the schools getting into it may not be enough for some kids to get in there. So that's a real problem, but that has to be taken to the school board. But again, we know that there are problems with this. I would love to see an earnings tax, because then we could offset the property tax. It would be an awesome way for us to do that.
Mr. Alvey, let me follow up on that. You mentioned the problem with 15% roughly of the folks that work down at the GM plant being Kansas City, Kansas residents. A cynic would say, what difference does that make? The Ford plant in Clay Como, a much smaller city, is still regarded as a high economic development value for the region. Same thing for the General Motors plant here.
No, absolutely, it is. And so that's one of those examples where we abated quite a bit when General Motors was threatening to leave 8, 9 years ago, and we were able to convince them that we would abate enough of their taxes to be, through industrial revenue bonds, to be able to build that paint plant. And in fact, as General Motors begins to shift to electric vehicle production, we've had a meeting, and as part of this meeting, to talk with a consultant to General Motors and to other manufacturers, automobile manufacturers. How do we make sure that we get the message of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, that this plant and these people here are a good workforce? It's a great place to continue to build and switch your production over to electric vehicle production. And then we would also then want to bring in the suppliers to that, which would include battery manufacturers, semiconductors. We have a proposal moving forward for semiconductors. These are the kinds of things we have to do as we look forward to make sure that we maintain that General Motors plant. And the good news on the General Motors plant, that industrial revenue bond that was let years ago, that will come off the books, and all of those tax revenues that have been used to pay the industrial revenue bonds will then begin flowing back into the unified government. And there are other industrial revenue bonds, and again, economic development incentive that we use fairly well to attract new development. More and more of that is going to be coming into the unified government at a rate of about $500,000 a year. Again, that development helps us reduce the tax burden.
All right, very good. Gentlemen, this is since the first of now 2 Chamber of Commerce debates. The Chamber, and I think everybody in Kansas City, Kansas wants to know, how are you going to sell the city? What's the biggest advantage of the businesses in Kansas City, Kansas that can be sold to other folks, to have them either come across the river, although we don't want to get into that war again, or come to Wyandotte County? How will you sell business to Kansas City? Mr. Garner, let's start with you.
To me, it's an easy sell. If you look at the geographic location of Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, it sits pretty much dead center in the entire metropolitan area. We have, as the mayor mentioned, lots of land bank properties that are fairly cheap, or with the right development plan can be given to developers in a way that could provide opportunities, not just for the developer, but for jobs and for goods and services for the people in Wyandotte County. Then you also look at, there's a lot of cultural heritage in Wyandotte County when you look and you go throughout the various neighborhoods. You can take your pick, Turtle Hill, Strawberry Hill, the Northeast, you can go out west, Muncie, Stony Point, Rosedale, Argentine. If you just look at these different areas, and even out into Bonner Springs and Edwardsville, and we don't often talk about those areas enough. And we need to do a better job of making sure that they feel like they have the representation of the unified government in these conversations as well, because they can be great partners in helping a mayor and helping a unified commission attract people to Wyandotte County, because Wyandotte County does have a lot to offer. When you talk about the roadways that we have, the easy access to all parts of the metropolitan area, and we just have great people here. We have good people willing to work, that love Wyandotte County, that want good partners that are going to come in here and be good community leaders and pay their fair share to help Wyandotte County be as great as we know it can be, because it is a good community. And we want Wyandotte County to be the beacon of hope moving forward as far as a community that has been totally turned around in revitalization.
Mr. Alvey.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Mr. Garner noted, we have geographically we're located in the center. We also have an excellent transportation system. The rail system. We have the most freight tonnage in the nation comes through the Argentine Turner Yard. People forget that we have an excellent workforce and people who are available to work. When urban came in and they're building, out west along the by the Speedway, one of the things they were looking for is workforce, because it's really hard to find workforce. And we said, well, we do have workforce that is eager and willing to work, but working with Urban, which is a very interesting company because they have a good focus on the community. They're not just focused on profit, they're focused on serving the community, and they have come in and they've helped us solve the problems for transportation. If you live, east of 635, need transportation, we're solving that problem. A lot of these folks need child care, and so they're working with the state to provide child care, and we're also working to provide education for people, and these are industry-leading wages that Urban Outfitters is bringing. Even the folks inside who work inside the plant, not in the logistics part of it, they're going to be making $35 an hour. Really good, those are good wages. So we have so many good things, but I think in terms of neighborhoods, where we really get down to housing, it really requires us to improve the look and the feel of our neighborhoods. And as we bring more development, we can bring in the right kinds of incentives and the right kind of investment from the unified government to improve those neighborhoods to really attract people.
Very good. I hope either one of you guys or the next mayor don't have to deal with this, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. Would you, as the mayor of KCK, sponsor or support a commissioner's resolution calling for mandatory vaccination of all city workers? Mr. Alvey, we'll start with you.
That's a tough one because, well, this is the way I look at it. I might because of this. And I see what the military, U.S. Armed Forces are doing now. What the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces is saying is, look, our responsibility is to protect our nation. If we are sick, we can't do that. And frankly, in battle, enemy forces would rather wound your people than kill them because you have to expend far more resources to care for the wounded, to evacuate them, to care for them, than you do taking care of your dead. That's why the Germans invented the daisy wheel, which simply exploded and spread out and maimed people so that you would have to remove them from the battlefield and care for them. So our responsibility as unified government employees is to serve the public. That's our primary responsibility, and protect ourselves. And if the vaccination is necessary to do that, we may have to do that because we don't want to put our workers at risk. We don't want to put our public at risk. We also don't want them to put their families at risk. However, mandatory vaccination is a huge leap, and it has to be done very conscientiously and almost as if we don't do this, then we're not going to be available to serve. That is our responsibility. We have to be available to serve. We have to be able to do that. This is why doctors, even those who sometimes say, I'd rather not get the vaccination, they say, but I have to do this in order to be able to serve my patients, to protect them. It's why they wear a mask even before COVID.
Mr. Garner, would you propose or support another commissioner's recommendation of a vaccine mandate for government workers?
I'd want to look at the science of it. I'd also want to look at the recommendations of both the CDC and the state, and then look at what the numbers look like here in Wyandotte County. I'd also want to get with our legal department and make sure that we hash out any legalities in doing that. I'm not opposed to it. If the pandemic got to a rate that left the unified government in a point to where we couldn't provide the essential services that our taxpayers come to expect, and if that we've got to that point, then yes, I would be open to that conversation.
Very good, thank you. We're going to start with you again, Mr. Garner, on this. There's been talk of an outside investigation into allegations of longstanding and widespread corruption inside of the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. What are your thoughts on that? Would you support such an investigation, sir?
My stance on that is there's a lot of allegations that have been made. I believe if I'm the mayor, one of the things that I would look at is I would get with the DA, I would get with the sheriff, and I would get with the police chief. And I'd have a meeting, and I would also invite the Justice Department and probably the FBI in so we can have a roundtable meeting about the seriousness of the allegations at hand. And then collectively, off the recommendation of our law enforcement professionals, support them either having that investigation or at least having some type of independent outside body look into these allegations because it's a matter of public trust. And when you talk about public trust in the criminal justice system, it's crucial. And the people demand transparency. They demand leadership that is going to stand up for what's right. and they demand, when you have those types of serious allegations that have been put out there, they want someone that's going to come forward and say, we're not just going to sit on this. We're going to come forward and say, hey, this is a huge problem for people in our community. It should be a problem for any mayor, and that conversation needs to be had. And yes, I support and I will stand by anyone that says there needs to be an outside independent investigation into allegations of egregious misconduct by any, not just the police, but any public official, but more importantly our police, because they are entrusted with the public's trust. And I don't have a problem with doing that, and that's my stance, that's where I stand, and I would be willing to come out as your mayor and make that happen.
Very good. Mr. Alvey.
Yes, so as you may know, that the KBI has had an investigation of Mr. Golubsky, and that investigation was then passed over to the FBI, and it's a current ongoing investigation. The unified government has cooperated fully, provided all the materials, all the documents that they have asked for, and we continue to do that. We ask anyone who has information about these allegations to please come forward and report those things. And I've talked to Chief Oakman, and very clear, if he says, after he's looked into things he just got started, if he says that we need to do this, I would support a Department of Justice investigation. But now let's be careful, because it is a $1 million a year, at least, cost for us to do that. But if that's what we have to do to get justice, that's what we have to do. But again, that puts pressure, again, on our tax base and on other services. But I just really have to say that, and Mr. Garner, you said this in the Kansas City Star, that if you were on the police force and second in command, you were writing policy, and you did not come forward, if you knew about these things and did not come forward, I think we did serve an explanation of why not. And you said that you were afraid of your job. But I have to say, if I don't fulfill what I am sworn to do as mayor, then you should not reelect me. And if you were sworn to protect the public and you knew of allegations and did not bring them forward, you should have done that. And you said, well, I might have lost my job. That's the risk you take. As a police officer, they take a risk every day they go out.
Okay, I believe that we're entitled to rebuttal. Mr. Garner?
Well, it's shameful, Mayor, that you would go there like that, considering my 32 years of service, to even suggest that I would sit on information of wrongdoing anywhere in the unified government. It's not just a dishonor to me, it's just an honor to anybody that looks like me, that worked in internal affairs and worked to get corrupt officers out of uniforms. It's shameful that you would say that, but that's okay, because here's where I'm gonna go with it. I knew nothing about that, but what I am saying is, if I'm mayor, as a mayor, you need to have the leadership that if you get information of wrongdoing, you step out front, you take the lead, and you say, we need an investigation. Period. I didn't sit on any information because I didn't know about any information. I knew it and found out just like you did. Just because I worked there, just like many other police officers, doesn't mean that we had that information. It's no different now. I work at Walmart on the night shift, and you work at Walmart on the day shift. If I'm stealing at night, just because we both work at Walmart doesn't mean that you know about it. So don't even go there with me and try and play me into this game and spin something on me. It's shameful. I serve this community honorably, and sacrificed for Wyandotte County. And I'm back here today running for mayor because I care about this community. And it's really shameful that you would go there. I've dealt with bad police officers. I've dealt with racism. I've dealt with that. And that hits me hard. I dealt with it my last few years on this police department. I dealt with the corruption that has happened in Wyandotte County, KCK PD, and I've seen it firsthand. Seen it firsthand and lived it. And I was one of the ones that stood with RDA Mark Dupree firmly and got crucified for it because I wanted outside investigations into the police department that I worked for.
We're on time, please. We're on time.
You don't owe me an apology. You owe this community an
Mr.
apology. You owe
Garner.
every police officer an apology for that statement.
Mr. Alvey.
Yes, I would like to say I apologize, Mr. Garner. I did not want to assume that, I should not have assumed that you knew about this. But again, it seems from the outside, when someone is in that position, would have seen what was going on, be able to say that, again, as I've said, I've told Chief Oakman, if you and your investigation find a reason to investigate, that you want a Department of Justice investigation, we will do that. Thank you.
Very good. One more question here before we move to the closers, and it's somewhat related. Mr. Alvey, we'll start with you. Tell the voters, in your mind, what's going on with the fire department. It doesn't look like the union and the management get along. Doesn't look like the management cares for the union very much. Union doesn't believe that management is dealing in good faith. Sounds like a problem.
It absolutely is. And so I've been meeting regularly with the president of the union and with his team and with Chief Callahan, because what they've been reported to me is some of the concerns they have, they don't feel like they're being heard. And so I insist that Chief Callahan and his staff meet with them. We've been meeting on a regular basis to try and identify the problems, but primarily to solve the communication, because long term, as I explained to them, I hear stories from the staff about what's going on from the union. I hear from the union problems that are going on with the staff. They've got to solve these problems. But moving forward, we have a great fire department, and we have to continue to bring resources to our fire department to make sure that it continues to serve our community well. So I think long-term, just continual conversation, collaboration is going to break those things down, and we're going to be able to resolve the issues that we continue to face.
Mr. Garner.
Repeat the question.
Your thoughts on this, on the nature of relations between the Kansas City Fire Department and its union. The management does not seem to like the union very much. The union believes that management is not negotiating in good faith. What's your thoughts on the situation here?
I think our men and women on the fire department need the type of leadership that they deserve. They provide a service to this community that a lot of us just wouldn't want to do. All they're asking for is open communication and a seat at the table to have a conversation about the issues that are most important to them. And that's me talking to their leadership and the information that was relayed to me. The contract negotiations aren't going as well as they would like them to go. They would like to see that move forward in a way that is beneficial to both the unified government, the community, and the men and women of the fire department. The type of leadership you would see from a Mayor Garner is that you're going to get a return phone call. You're going to have a seat at my table. You're going to have engaged leadership. If I see problems going on between our unions, whether it's the fire, police, or any other union inside the unified government, leadership requires that you get involved and that you get engaged, that you move yourself from the 9th floor and you get yourself out in the community and you engage with the issues that are most important, not just to the community, but to employees that work for the unified government, and find out what their concerns, what their issues are, and make sure that they're being treated fairly. When I hear about a $2 million lawsuit from one of the firemen because of discrimination, and you hear all the questionable allegations that came from that on record from the court documents, that's concerning to me. And then you hear that this person is still fighting to get what a jury said is due to them. That's concerning to me. And that's where a mayor with the right leadership comes in, can bridge those gaps.
Al, excellent, thank you. Candidates, we've reached the stage in this where we're at the closing statements. Before we go any further, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for your time and your passionate and intense responses. I think you have served the voters of Kansas City, Kansas well tonight, and I look forward to seeing you back here once again on October 29th. According to the rules, as we agreed to earlier before this debate started, Mr. Alvey won and decided to close last with the final remarks. So, Mr. Garner, your closing remarks, please.
Well, you've heard a lot, and you're going to hear a lot on this campaign about where we're at. The people I've talked to and the things that I've seen, we need to talk about where we should be. And where we should be is lower taxes. We should have investment in our disinvested areas of our community. We should have a utility bill that really is a utility bill. We should have infrastructure programs that are equitable in how we deliver these goods and services. We should have public safety that is fully staffed, that is reformed. We should also have a strategic COVID-19 recovery plan. We should also build good relationships with our partners, our sister cities in Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. And the people I've talked to out there want a mayor from the unified government that's going to engage with them in a positive way to find out what their needs, what their interests, what their concerns are, and make sure they're part of the conversation. Even the conversation when we talk about the American Rescue Plan. They want to know that the unified government is going to be there for them to help with their needs and their issues in their community as well. You've got people in the Northeast that have been begging for grocery stores, begging for street lights that works and sidewalks and lawns to be mowed. You've got people living throughout in the Midtown area, throughout Wyandotte County, in Rosedale, in Argentine, and in Piper that want lower taxes. They don't like big corporate investors coming in and paying little to nothing while they're carrying that burden and the hardship that it causes on our schools. We've got to be responsible, and that's where the leadership that a Mayor Tyrone Garner campaign is willing to bring in to the mayor's office on the 9th floor. And you need that leadership moving from the 9th floor into the community. I ask that you go to www.garnerformayor.com. You can learn more about my platform, and thank you, and God bless you as we go through this campaign.
Thank you. Mr. Alvey.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, to all the residents and businesses of Wyandotte County, it is truly an honor and a privilege, and I am humbled to be your servant leader. And I have to look back over the last 3.5 years and see where we have been. And I think that the leadership I have brought, the experience I have in leadership, has produced the right results for our community. We are making progress in reducing our taxes. We are making progress in bringing new development, over $900 million of new investment in Wyandotte County, most of which is going to be paying taxes immediately to our unified government. Those are the things that we are going to continue to do. I would also say that during the COVID crisis, we were really stuck. We did not know, because no one really knew what to do with the COVID crisis. So the first thing I did is I convened collaborators from across the county to say, you need information, we need your help. We're going to discuss every day, and we met every day for months, nearly a year, to identify the problems, bring information, and make sure that we could get our effort moving forward. It was always about protecting our residents, doing what we needed to do to take care of our people. We achieved that. In spite of all the problems that COVID brought, we even had $900 million in economic development. I would also say that when the death of Mr. Floyd occurred, I immediately convened a task force to look at all our practices, because what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis, we did not want to happen here. And so we have done and continue to do a thorough review of our law enforcement practices to make sure that every person gets equitable treatment.
Very good.
Thank you.
Candidates, thank you very much. This has been the Kansas City, Kansas mayoral debate sponsored by the Kansas City, Kansas Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make sure you vote. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.